do this because you want peace in your marriage. You want calm in your marriage. You want joy in your marriage. You want growth, right? You want a marriage that's more than just, oh, we're in between arguments. You want a marriage that feels like we have more good days than we have bad days. And when we have bad days, we feel confident we can work through them. So stop making changes dependent on what your husband is doing. Make changes because you want to be that person that is prioritizing the future over your temporary discomfort.
Welcome to the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Perda. As a marriage coach who's married with 3 kids, I know how much parenthood could change a marriage. If flirting, laughing, and having fun together feels like a thing of the past, then I'm here to teach you that marriage doesn't have to feel so hard with your parents, and your marriage can thrive even when you're in the season of raising kids. Whether you're in a good place in your marriage and you just want to continue growing together, or you're wondering if you even like your spouse anymore, this podcast has something for you. Join me here each week as we dive into what it takes to help your marriage grow, and maybe even do a 180. You'll learn ways to handle conflict better, bring that spark back into your relationship, as well as learn how to improve other areas of your life from my lovely guest experts. Are you ready for the next stage of your life and marriage? Let's dive in.
Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. I am very excited to bring this topic to you because this could be the game changer for you once you recognize that you are doing this. And this is the very reason why you are not seeing the consistent, reliable, stable changes that you want in your marriage, right? In the way that you and your husband fight, in the way that you and your husband are able to problem solve together, to be able to come together as a team, to be able to have more joy than there is frustration and resentment and stress. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about why you guys end up being in a cycle of something happens and then you talk about it and then you figure out what needs to change, and change happens for about 2 weeks or less. And then you end up back in the same place. And then the cycle keeps repeating so much that you start not trusting that your marriage is capable of change and that you either have to accept how things are and deal with it to stay married, or you're like, maybe it's time to think about working with someone. Or maybe it's time to think about seeing our way out of this marriage because we don't see this getting any better. And this isn't healthy for either of us to stay in. This isn't healthy for our kids to witness. And this is not a fun reality for us. Okay. So if you're in this cycle right now, I'm going to share with you why that is. So I want to tell you a story. Now, I have never, maybe like one time, been able to stick to a consistent regimen when it comes to moving my body, physical movement, right? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm relatively healthy. I love to go on walks. I love to go hiking, not like a backpacker hiking, like not that kind of hiking. I like to drive to go hike and then go home. Okay. Not like multi-day things. No, that's not me. But when it comes to being an athlete or being a consistent person that exercises, that was never me. I did not grow up doing sports, right? I learned to swim for survival reasons. And then when it came time to join the swim team, I couldn't because it didn't work logistically with my family. And I didn't have a consistent exercise routine until I picked up yoga. And honestly, I believe that I stuck with that because I was going through a breakup. And I needed something to dive into. And honestly, it saved me. It was like the very start of my journey into personal development, into becoming more self-aware, into eventually becoming the marriage coach that I am today and having the marriage that I have today, right? And so I'm very thankful for that. But as soon as parenthood came knocking on my door, right, my husband already had a kid. So I became a stepmom from the get go, and I dropped yoga because, in the name of being a family woman, right? And so, up until recently, I, again, was in that place where movement was not a regular thing. I would have my moments, right? I'd be like, oh, I need to be better about it. I need to exercise. And so I would go back, and then I would get sick, or the kids would get sick, or something in life would happen and I would drop it. And then months would go by. I'm like, oh, yeah, I should go back to it. It wasn't ingrained in me, right? Whereas now, ever since moving to Georgia, right? I've been here since June now, and realizing, okay, I can't just say I want to do things. I need to have an intrinsic internal motivation to keep doing this so that when there are situations that come up, I'm not so quickly and easily defaulting to these excuses and basically breaking a promise to myself. And so I had to dig deep and figure out, okay, what matters to me enough to push through all the reasons and excuses that can come up for me to not take care of my physical body, right? And so for me, it was a number of reasons, and I won't go into them because that's not really relevant for this conversation. But when it comes to your marriage, I want you to ask yourself, why do you want it to change? Have you been wanting to change your marriage because of your husband? Because of your kids? Because if that's the truth, that's the reason why your marriage isn't sticking with that consistent change that you want. That's why it feels like you can't trust that change is going to be long lasting. When you look to your husband and you're like, we talked about what needs to change, what you need to do differently, and you're not sticking with it. It's because he's doing it for you. He's not doing it for himself. He hasn't found that reason to do it for himself, just like you haven't found a strong enough reason to make your own changes for yourself. Okay? We act so much more consistently and with so much more commitment and dedication and loyalty when we are driven by internal motivation. Okay? Studies show that intrinsic motivation, which means doing something that aligns with your own personal values or goals, right? When you do something with intrinsic motivation, you have a greater source of consistency and long-term success rather than doing things because of extrinsic motivation. So doing things for, external validation or external rewards or doing it for someone else. Okay? This is how we're built psychologically. This is just how we are. We are driven more by internal motivation, and we're more likely to persist through challenges, and we're more likely to achieve meaningful outcomes because our effort feels like it has a purpose. We understand why we're doing things. We're not just doing things for the sake of doing them. And they are more aligned with our values, our identity. Okay? So this is why after you talk with your husband, the big talk, things might feel better temporarily for 2 weeks or so, or maybe less. And then you slip back into old patterns because those changes weren't rooted in who you are, in what you are driven by, right? They were merely reactions to outside pressure, right? Like being afraid for what life might mean for your kids if you guys don't fix it. But when you work on your marriage for yourself, then you have a reason to keep going. You understand every single piece of the puzzle and why you're doing it. You're moving with purpose rather than having your motivation wax and wane because you're doing it for him or because you're doing it for your kids. When you do it for him, then your motivation fluctuates. When you're doing it for you, your motivation stays constant. And when it comes to growth in your marriage, it needs consistency because that's how trust is built. That's how the foundation is built. It's like when you are building wooden blocks, you need a strong foundation. If there is no foundation, it keeps crumbling after 2 weeks. You can only get so high, right? But when you have that strong foundation of consistent changed action, so much that it's like, oh, this is our new normal, you can keep building your marriage up to new heights. So this is why working on your marriage for your husband often leads to frustration, to wavering, to burnout, to resentment, to stress, to unreliable growth. Okay? So this is why what you're doing isn't currently working. Okay? So common signs of this being present in your marriage is constant arguing. And the arguing isn't getting any better, right? I always talk about fighting better, right? How can we fight better the next time? How can we improve the way we fight? If things are staying the same and the way you guys are fighting is not improving, that is a sign. If you feel like your marriage is just in between arguments, that's a sign. If your marriage feels like there is more stress than there is joy, that's a sign. If you feel like resentment is the third party in your marriage, that is a sign, okay? Resentment is meant to be like a flag that you address and work through. It isn't meant to be constantly around. It is not your third partner in your marriage, okay? So if your resentment is there, or your husband's resentment is there, and they're that third wheel that you can't kick, this is a sign that that motivation needs to be stronger within you. That there is not a reliable, consistent drive of changed action going on. It's wavering, okay? When we default to using our partner as a reason to change, oh, if I do this, then they'll do this. If you already just pay attention to my language, if this, then that, if you are relying on your partner who is human, it's going to be inconsistent by nature, okay? Because we are all flawed. You're human, your husband is human, I'm human, my husband is human. We have emotional reactions. We get tired. We have triggers. We have communication habits that we've learned from our caretakers that aren't the healthiest, right? We have toxic communication habits. And so if we are relying on our husbands to be our source of motivation, to keep changing, to keep becoming the wife that our ideal marriage has, then we're going to waver because he is not going to always be on his A game. He's not always going to be calm, collected. He's not always going to be super mindful about how he's saying things, right? We only have control over ourselves. So if we look to only being that ideal version of us that we are working towards when he is, we are setting ourselves up for failure. You have to decide to be the wife that you want to be the wife that has the marriage that you want as much as possible, regardless of what he's doing. Because if you waver, then so will he, right? If he's looking to you to set the tone and you're like super kind, super respectful in how you are you one day, And then the next day, you're like going back to how you used to be. He's not going to know what is going on. It's going to be really confusing. And so he won't trust the change that you're trying to impart. He's not going to trust the new way that you guys fight because he's not sure which version of a wife he's going to get. So he is not going to know whether it's worth it for him to make the changes, right? But you're the one listening to this episode. So you know that you only have control over yourself. You know that either way, it is to your benefit to grow as a communicator, whether it is for yourself, for your marriage, or if you guys don't end up staying together, for your co-parenting relationship. Either way, this is a necessity if you want your life to be easier. Okay? Improving your relationship by depending on your husband and using him as your primary source of motivation and expecting him to be perfect is a recipe for disappointment and also a recipe for your marriage not ever improving. Okay? We need to shift away from, I'm only going to do these things if he does them. Shift away from dependency and shift towards consistency. Who do you need to be to have the marriage that you want, right? Your marriage needs consistent, reliable, stable growth, not wishy-washy stuff. It all comes down to it not being about changing your husband, okay? When we only change because we see a change in our husband, that's where you're setting yourself up for failure, okay? This is about taking ownership of your reactions, of your emotions, your patterns, your communication style, okay? Wanting your marriage to grow while also blaming your husband for upsetting you, for not having the marriage that you want, does not work, okay? You know what does work is wanting the marriage that you want and understanding what changes need to happen on your side of the street and then staying in your own lane, okay? Let him do his own work and then you do your own work. Stay in your own lane, okay? This is why it's so important to do the work for you. When you focus on yourself and who you want to be so that you can feel proud of the wife that you are being in the relationship, right? Not contributing anymore to how your relationship is now, but instead setting a good foundation for what's to come, what you desire, being a model for your kids, right? Feeling proud of how you're showing up and how much you're growing. That is what's going to drive that consistent change within you. And as you change, you're naturally going to influence your husband to trust in the process, to be more open for him changing, because he knows that things aren't going to go backwards and the changes that he's making aren't going to be for nothing. Okay? So do the work for you, right? Do it because you're tired of being reactive. Do it because you're tired of riding the emotional roller coaster anytime that you guys get in a fight. Do it because you want to be able to be the partner that truly can hear what he's saying without getting defensive, without getting passive aggressive. Do it because you want to work together as a team. Do it because anytime something happens, you want it to be conversational instead of argumentative. Do it because you want to be able to come up with a resolution as if it's as simple as brainstorming for your next vacation, right? Where you're taking into consideration what you want out of the trip, what he wants out of the trip, what you don't want to do, what he doesn't want to do. And you're just kind of creating something that fits both of your needs. Okay? Do it because you want it to be that simple. And you can do this by focusing on growing your own self-awareness, reflecting, right? Reflecting on why you are wanting this marriage to work, why you are willing to do the work, so that you aren't depending on, well, I'm only going to do this if my husband does it. I'm only going to do this when I feel happy. No. Do this because you want happiness. Do this because you want peace in your marriage. You want calm in your marriage. You want joy in your marriage. You want growth, right? You want a marriage that's more than just, oh, we're in between arguments. You want a marriage that feels like we have more good days than we have bad days. And when we have bad days, we feel confident we can work through them. All right? So stop making changes dependent on what your husband is doing. Make changes because you want to be that person that is prioritizing the future over your temporary discomfort. Okay? This is what's going to keep you going. Just like how for me with my walks, I have been consistent, okay? I freaking hate the cold. And I have still been walking in 30 degrees, okay? And I'm from California, so that's freaking cold to me, okay? My ideal temperature is a good 70, okay? Maybe not in Georgia because it's kind of humid here, but 30 degrees, frigid. My hands are cold. I can't even feel them. And I have to wear like multiple layers with fleece lined leggings, right? But I'm doing it. Okay? I'm not letting things get in my way. Even if the kids are home, I take them with me. Maybe I walk for less, right? I have lower standards because I don't want to set myself up for frustration when they start whining, right? But I do it because this is who I have decided I am. So, who are you deciding to be? What do you need to do to become that wife that has the marriage that you want? Where are you willing to grow? Okay? That is the biggest part, is admitting that you're not perfect either. You have places where you can improve and choosing your own growth. Again, whether it's to make yourself proud, to have the marriage that you want, to set yourself up for no matter what, whether it is to be a great co-parent, a great future partner, whatever the work is, whatever your driver is, you're going to benefit so much from it because communication basically rules everything, right? We need to communicate to do almost everything that we need in life because life is relationship driven, whether it's your marriage, your kids, with, if your husband becomes your ex and your co-parent, your family, okay? Do it for you. Tell yourself, I am ready to grow, okay? And if you're at that point and you're ready to choose your own growth, you're ready to choose your future happiness and be willing to work through those hurdles of, growing pains, of making mistakes and trial and error, then reach out to me. Okay, I've got a communication course you can take. We can work together one-on-one or with you as a couple. You've got options here. Okay, just because you didn't grow up with healthy models of communication or marriage, that's not an excuse anymore. Okay, that is most of society, sadly. But there are resources out there that can help you through that. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to be the master of everything. Okay, you are good at your things. I am good at this. I am great at helping you solve your communication problems. I'm great at helping you fight the right way so that fighting doesn't have to be your reality anymore. You don't have to fight in your marriage. Conflict can just be conversational. And you can save that time that you're right now spending constantly arguing, going to do more fun things like diving into a hobby or going on dates or laughing more with your husband having your house feel more calm and fun and joyful and peaceful, okay? That's all waiting for you on the other side of your growth. So, are you ready to grow? Check out the links in the show notes if you want to check out the communication course or book a call with me to talk to me about working together. Either way, I am rooting for you. I am here for you. You are worth the effort of your growth, and it is by far the most worthwhile work that you can do, okay? Your family will thank you. Your future self will thank you. And I'm here for you. All right, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Of course, if you love this episode, let me know and share it with someone that you think it would help. And if you love the show, leave a rating and review. I would be so, so grateful. And I'll catch you back here on the next episode. Bye.
That's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you did, please send me a message over on Instagram at Michelle Perda Coaching to let me know what you loved most about it. Hearing from my listeners is my absolute favorite. And if you've been loving this podcast, please leave a rating and review. This will help people like you find the show and get the help they need. Catch you here on the next episode. Bye.